Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our second webinar in our Legislative Action Team webinar series. This is Lege 201, How to Engage with Lawmakers. And tonight we are very excited to feature some words from State Representative Mary González. So I'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to give a few housekeeping tips. Even though you may be able to click on your computer and unmute yourself, please do not. We're trying to minimize the noise and distractions for others, so please keep your phone muted at this time. And if you have questions as we go along, you can always type them in the chat window. And once we get through the presentation, we'll have a little time for some Q&A. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm Heather Busby. I'm the Executive Director of NARAL Pro-Choice Texas, and I'm one of your presenters this evening. Blake Rocap, our Legislative Counsel, is here with me tonight, and we've included Alexa Garcia Ditta. She was unable to be on the webinar, but we wanted to introduce you all to her if you don't already know her. She's our Communications and Policy Initiatives Director. So I'm going to turn it over to Blake to give you some current updates from the 85th Legislature.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you have been following along in the news, you'll know this already, but the Senate has been passing bad abortion restrictions very quickly since Dan Patrick took over and scrapped the 2/3 rule in favor of a 3/5 rule. There's not a lot of deliberation or debate about bills, and they sort of get passed along party lines. So the Senate has already passed 4 abortion bills that we're concerned about. Senate Bill 8, which copies the federal law banning some abortion procedures and also restricts fetal tissue donation. Senate Bill 20, which passed today, which bans insurance plans in Texas from covering abortion, and that's even private insurance plans that people pay for with their own money. And Senate Bill 25, which removes a specific kind of medical malpractice lawsuit for families who allege that their physicians didn't tell them something about their pregnancy or lied to them about their pregnancy, and that they had a bad outcome as a result of that. Doctors would now be able to lie to their patients if they thought it would prevent the patients from having an abortion. And the Senate has also passed Senate Bill 415, which bans dilation and evacuation abortions, which is used the most common and safest procedure used after about 14 weeks of pregnancy. So with the Senate passing those bills, they move across the Capitol building to the House for them to take up. And we haven't seen the House move on any of those bills yet, with the exception of House Bill 200, which is the companion to Senate Bill 8. So we expect that the House is going to move House Bill 200 through the process and pass that and force the Senate to go back and look at it as House Bill 200, but that bill is well on its way to passing. The other things the House has done so far is House Bill 35, which has to do with fetal tissue disposal. Those of you who've been watching since the summer know that the Department of State Health Services changed the way it required physicians and hospitals and abortion clinics to dispose of embryonic and fetal tissue, to make it more restrictive and even requiring cremation or burial. So House Bill 35 would make some of those changes statutory. Luckily, because our partners at the Center for Reproductive Rights sued and had a successful outcome earlier this winter in January to the intermediate part of their lawsuit, we have a little bit of leverage to try to get some changes into House Bill 35 that will hopefully not be so egregious and will not affect operations of abortion clinics or access to safe legal abortion. So we're hopeful that that bill will come out of committee in a much improved state with some changes that we've recommended as it moves forward. The other bill that's happening this week is House Bill 2962, which requires more extensive and specific reporting of abortion complications. And we're keeping an eye on that because it's a vehicle for bad things, and it could be used um, to harm the operations of some of clinics. It's not on its face bad, but it could. We don't really trust the intentions of the author or the rest of the House. So the good news is that, as you can see, the House has been taking it kind of slow, and we think some of the things that they're really geared up to do are less harmful and aren't going to impact access to care. But we're always leery of bad amendments going on to bills on the floor. We'll see that this week in a what should be innocuous Texas Railroad Commission bill. The super conservative right wing of the Texas House are putting on anti-immigrant and anti-transgender amendments. And when it comes to healthcare bills, they will, of course, put on anti-abortion amendments. So we're ever vigilant. But thanks for your support, and thanks for following along with us, and thanks for those of you who have been contacting your senator and representative so far this session. We'll be having more asks of you as these bills progress, and I'm going to let Heather introduce Mary to let you know what can make an effective visit to see your senator or representative.
Thanks, Blake. I also wanted to flag for everyone that there is some positive movement at the legislature this week. On Wednesday, the House State Affairs Committee is going to hear House Bill 330 and House Bill 1373. And both of those bills would remove the nonsensical, ridiculous prohibitions on minors who are parents already from accessing birth control without parental consent. So that would increase access to contraceptives for any young person under 18 who is already a parent. As some people know or may not know, if you are under 18 in Texas, you are required to get parental consent for contraceptives unless you're going to a Title X clinic. And even if you're a parent yourself and you can consent to all of your child's medical care, the state of Texas doesn't allow you to consent to your own reproductive health care and get contraceptives. So these are some really good bills, and we hope you'll join us in supporting them. We'll be sending out an email in the morning through our legislative action team, and be on the lookout for that in your inboxes. So in addition to that, we are going to go ahead and get started with Representative Gonzalez's video. She recorded this for us last week, and she's got some words of wisdom for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
Don't be nervous. I think that a lot of times people get really nervous coming to talk to lawmakers, but most of us, I can say, really truly want to listen, be informed, want to hear from people. The reason we're here is to serve the public, so we want you to come talk to us. So don't be nervous, be informed, be precise, and be human. So I think sometimes the most effective ways to help a legislator connect an issue is to make it a real story, a human story, and that requires some type of vulnerability from the constituents, but that vulnerability, I think, helps create that bridge for human connection between a lawmaker and people who are visiting. I think that's a difficult answer because there's 181 different lawmakers in the Capitol, and everyone's a little bit different. Think about when you have children, for example. I'm the oldest of 11. My mother communicates with each of us differently because each of us respond differently to different methods of communication, right? So in the same way, each legislator is different. I know some legislators really, the letters work, others the calls work, others the visits work. Here's what I will say. I think it depends a little bit also on the issue, but I think people should just do everything. Make the call, do the letter, make the visit, and do all three. If specifically it's an issue you care about, then you have to be extremely visible, because sometimes it really is easier to ignore an email versus a visit. And so I encourage people to do what they can and do as much of it as they can, because every little bit does help. And you never know what's going to actually work until you actually get to understand the personality of that legislator. For example, for me, personal visits are the most impactful way to make a difference, then phone calls, and lastly, letters. Because sometimes with letters, it's easy for it to become a form letter. and you don't want that to happen. You want it to be as connected as possible. The thing that I have seen that changes people's minds is relationships and connection. So the more you can do that, the more authentic those connections can be, the more probability you have in changing or in impacting or having influence on the decision. Oh, a staffer, right? Because I mean, if you walk in, you're going to be greeted by a staffer, and then I think, again, if you come or if you make an appointment, if you are very detailed about what your goals are, I think you're going to be more successful. So when you just come in, depending who you want to speak to, that person could be busy. I mean, it's a legislative session. It's 140 days. There's a lot of things happening. There's committee hearings. Things are moving. So if you want to meet with somebody specifically, a legislative aide who deals with that issue, the representative specifically, then making an appointment will make you more successful in reaching those goals. And so that would be the first thing I would tell somebody expect chaos, expect movement, but again, if you want to be successful in the chaos, then being proactive and setting up some scheduled appointments will help you be successful. I think specifically in this space, because it is kind of geared by or ruled by some maybe old school tendencies, being really polite does help. Like, you're going to go into offices that they don't agree with you. But I think if you started kind of with a compliment sandwich, hi, how are you? I'm so glad to be here today. Let me talk to you about my issues. Thank you. I think just politeness does go a long way. And I know sometimes it's hard because of people who haven't always shown our communities the same type of dignity back. But I always have been so moved by the idea that they go low, we go high kind of thing. And so going in there, being polite, giving the information, speaking to who you need to speak to, and then just leaving. And I mean, the reality is sometimes we may not be able to change their minds, but we shouldn't be silent. And I think that is part of the goals, is we shouldn't allow different ideas or dominant ideas in this space to silence very necessary facts and stories. And so understand that is the role too, is to make sure that we don't create an invisibility, because it'd be really easy to write these people off and say, oh, well, they're not going to agree. Well, maybe not, you're right. But should we just allow them to kind of continue to exist without hearing a counter perspective? And so my advice is to be brave, be strong, be polite, and recognize that you might not change their minds, but you're doing a bigger thing for justice. And I think that should be the motivation for the work that we're doing. I think in my dream world, I always tell people that they come and get involved during legislative session, which is great. But the reality is politics and policy are far removed. So what I would appreciate is saying, we're gonna help Mary González have some allies, so she's not out there by herself or with 5 other people trying to get this done. That we're going to, the most perfect email in a perfect world. Hey, Mary, thanks for what you did. Inspired by you, I am going to go block walk for 10 hours for a different candidate or in a swing district or something like that, because then you're showing that we're going to help get people there to kind of to fight with you. Because there was an analysis done that talked about all the people who have come to testify over these awful bills that are happening. And it's great that everyone's coming, but it can't just be a one-time thing. It has to say, we just need new people, really, in order to see the changes that we need. And that really does take engagement and campaigns. And so it has to be a continued process. And so that's what I would say. I would say, don't even write me a letter. Just spend an hour, phone banking for somebody who thinks like us. Because the truth of the matter is that I feel that one of the best ways to create the change we need is to get new people in here. I just want to say, well, first off, thank you to your organization. I think that you do so much necessary work. And to the people who are listening, you're a little weird, right? Because a lot of people aren't doing the work. There are 28 million people in the state of Texas and only the same few are always engaged. And I know it can be exhausting, right? But it's really the most important work that we can do. And I really appreciate the perseverance, the movement and the love that's kind of surrounded by this movement. And so I just want to say thank you.
All right. So thanks to Representative Mary González for recording that for us. And I want to remind everyone as we go along, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window on your screen. So we're going to give you a couple of tips about having legislative visits. And one of the best places to start is actually looking up and making sure you know who represents you at the Texas legislature. And as you see here, this is the homepage of the Texas legislature online, and where this big yellow arrow is, shows you where you can type in your address and look up who represents you. So if you don't know that, no shame. Now is your opportunity to get online and look that up. So once you know who you need to meet with, you can then go ahead and, as Mary suggested, try and get an appointment with the member, or more likely a member of their staff. So if you see here, we've got some screenshots. You can either call the district office or call the Capitol office if you're in Austin, and you'll go to either the House or the Senate, and you go down to members, and then you'll have a list of members. So here we've highlighted Mary, and then brought up here her information. So you can see her district office number, her Capitol number. You can also see some links down here that'll give you more information about her, as far as what committees she's on, bills that she's authored, sponsored, co-authored, co-sponsored, amendments she's authored. And then you can also visit her page on the website that gives a lot more information, like her biography, her press releases, and other information. So then, as you're preparing to meet with your state lawmaker, you've got your appointment, and the next step is to recruit some of your friends. It's a lot more fun and honestly a lot less nerve-wracking if you have folks go with you. Ideally, a team of 3 or 4 people. You don't really want to have more than that, because the offices, the meeting spaces are pretty small. It can get really cramped. So if you have a large group, it can be hard to accommodate. But if you do have a lot of people, just call and let them know. If you're meeting at the Capitol, a lot of times they can arrange for another space, or if you're going to bring a large group into their district office, giving them some warning will make them more apt to accommodate you. And then you want to do your homework. So here we have Mary González's biography, and that's from her page on the Texas Legislature Online. So you can read up on your lawmaker, get to know a little bit about them, see what their positions are, kind of get an idea of where they stand on some of these issues, what makes them tick, so you can relate to them on a personal level and hopefully be able to reach them, whether they're someone who agrees with you or is not in agreement with you. Before the meeting, you want to do some background research on the issue. And I want to stop here and say that you are not required to be experts on reproductive health rights and justice. You don't need to run out and get a legal degree so you can analyze everything that a bill does or does not do. That is something that we're here for. We're here to help you with that and to be a resource for you. And really, it's not about you being the experts. It's about you as a constituent connecting with your lawmaker and speaking from the heart. So you want to, before you go into the meeting, have an idea of what your goals are. Are you asking your lawmaker to support or oppose a specific piece of legislation? Are you there to let them know in general where you stand on reproductive health rights and justice? Are you there to thank them for the positions that they've taken and offer your own help as a constituent to help their office? So get an idea about what you want to achieve out of that meeting, and it'll help you stay on track while you're in the office. And then you and your friends, before you go into the meeting, should divide up your roles. So typically you can have one person who takes the lead, leads off the introductions, sort of keeps the meeting going, keep it on track. Maybe one person has a personal story that they want to share, and that's a really impactful thing to do when you're meeting with a lawmaker. And then one person can be the one who makes the ask of the lawmaker to achieve your goal. I also recommend that you maybe take some notes or be prepared to take notes so that you can follow up on anything. If the lawmaker asks questions that you don't know how to answer, and you say, you know what, that's a great question. I don't know the answer right now, but I would love to get the information and get back to you and let you know the answer. So you might want to take some notes on that. You also want to take notes on who you met with. If you met with a staffer, typically they'll give you a business card, so you want to hang on to that so you can thank them later. You want to print out any materials you would like to leave behind, and that's something, once again, you can contact us. If there's a fact sheet you would like to leave with your lawmaker, it's always a good idea. Even the ones who agree with us and support our issues don't always know everything, and so having a resource for them is a good idea. And you can always contact us, info@prochoicetexas.org. If you need help with this preparation, you need leave behinds to print out and give to the person that you meet with, we can provide you with talking points and help prepare you for your visits. So during the meeting, the first thing obviously you want to do is introduce yourself, and as Representative González suggested, be very polite. Even if you're walking into a hostile office, you still want to be polite, so that hopefully you'll be heard, or at least you won't get immediately thrown out. You want to thank the person for meeting with you and thank them for taking the time. Even if it's not a friendly office, you still want to be courteous. And if it is a friendly office and they've taken some votes recently that you are, expressed a position that you agree with, then it's a good time to start off by thanking them for their support. Then you want to explain why you're there and why you support or oppose the particular piece of legislation, why it's important to you. Like I said, it's not necessary that you know everything. You're not supposed to be an expert. You're not a professional lobbyist. You're a human. You're a constituent, and you're there to connect with your lawmaker. And your voice matters. It is important. Like I said, having someone share a story, whether that's you or someone else in your group, will really help to personalize the issue, and often it really makes a difference to that lawmaker. It can really inspire them to take a stand, or to be a stronger advocate if they're supportive, or maybe think twice if they are typically not supportive of reproductive rights. It's okay to be emotional and personal. Really speak from the heart. Be clear about what you're asking for. If you're asking them to oppose a bill, be clear that you're asking them to oppose it. If you want them to support it, let them know that. If they're already a sponsor, co-sponsor, author of some legislation, you can say, hey, I thank you so much for your work on this bill. How are things going with your colleagues? Is there anything we can do to support you and pushing to get more of your colleagues to sign on to this? And is there anything else that they think you can do to help them move this bill? And then thank them again. You want to be thanking them throughout the process. Be as courteous as possible in person while you're in the office. And then afterwards, we recommend sending a handwritten card, or at the very least an email, to the person that you met with, thanking them for taking the time to meet with you. All right, so these are all the tips we have, unless Blake has anything to add from what I've gone through. And we'd love to take any questions that you have. I can unmute folks unless it gets too noisy, and then if anyone would like to ask questions without chatting it, or you can enter it into the chat window. So I'm going to unmute for a minute and see if anyone has any questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dawn. Um, I've been writing a lot of postcards, and I was wondering, because I've heard that postcards go through more quickly because they don't have to go through the process of making sure that they don't have poisons on them. Do you have any sense for whether postcards are better or letters are better? You can only fit so much on a postcard. So I try and be very, very specific, as you said, about what I'm asking for. But what is your recommendation on that?
So, the state legislature is a different process than when you're writing postcards to members of Congress in Washington, D.C. So, I don't, when you're sending, and I've also heard sending postcards to their district office rather than their DC office if you're doing congressional postcards. That's preferable. I think any contact matters. As Representative González said, making the more personal contact, trying to get a meeting, or going to a town hall and meeting with your elected officials and letting them hear from you in person is always the most impactful, but that's not always possible. So, I think keep writing, whether it's a postcard, whether it's a letter, an email, making those phone calls. Every little bit counts. We've just got to keep speaking up, and eventually, hopefully, they're going to start listening.
Yeah, I would say when you write, whether it's a postcard or a letter, when you should, every time you do that, you should make sure you write to your own representative or senator, the person that represents you, and make it clear in that communication that you are their constituent. It's certainly great to send postcards to lots of different members, but if you're going to take the time to do that, definitely take the time to write your own representative or senator, and take the time to, if you have the space, or make sure you have the space to make sure that it's clear that you're their constituent. You can put a return address on it so they know who it's coming from, and that's an important piece of the communication.
Can I ask a follow-up question based on that?
Sure.
So I see a lot of calls to action to call members of committees. And quite often those committees are not represented by someone on those committees. So is that not a great idea? Does that have any effect when they're on a committee and you're calling about something specifically in that committee? Or should we really just only call people that represent us?
No, the committee members definitely are taking feedback on behalf of their colleagues who represent other parts of the state. So they are, because that bill is in front of them, they're definitely considering it and considering all the input on those bills. So when we're asking you to call the committee members or reach out to them, it's because their committee is hearing the bill and they have the power to either advance it or stop it. And they're considering all the input from all over the state.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to go through some of the chat questions and then I'll unmute everyone again. If you're using the web instead of just the call-in, it is possible to unmute yourself, but in order to reduce noise, I have everyone muted at the moment. So Emily has asked, how often do you push back or ask questions regarding your opposition or support to a bill? So I think in the meeting, if you're actually sitting down and meeting with the lawmaker, you want to be firm and clear, but still keep it cordial and polite. You're not there to argue with them. If they don't agree with you, you're probably not going to change their mind on the spot. I think that's probably incredibly rare. So, I think just voicing your opinion and doing it face to face carries a lot of weight. And then, you can follow up again in writing and say, thank you for your time. I just wanted to reiterate my opposition to this bill. And I urge you to think about, voting against it, or if it's a bill you support, please support this bill. So, I think that's really, and then beyond that, you keep signing the petitions, keep making the phone calls, keep writing the letters, sending the emails. But in person, you don't want to get too overzealous with it because at some point it becomes counterproductive.
I think that leads into the next question about the kind of some of the most common mistakes. that are made when folks contact their legislators is if you're in touch or having a meeting with your senator or representative and it's on an issue where you don't agree with them or they don't agree with you, it's very easy to get into that argument mode instead of trying to let them know, the three things. You're their constituent, you oppose this bill, and here's why. And they may try to further explain what the bill does or tell you why they support it. And I think you try to listen thoughtfully and see if you can find some common ground to continue to express your disapproval of the bill or why you oppose it. But getting into an argument, having them be defensive is a little bit counterproductive. And I think it's not the time to be making threats necessarily about, well, we're going to get you unelected or something like that. That's not quite the time for that. Use that energy to go out and work for a candidate who more reflects your views, like Representative González said.
Yeah, and if they're being really pushy or rude to you, and trust me, unfortunately, that has happened to folks when they've gone into some of these visits. As Representative González said, take the high road. Just thank them for your time. If you were uncomfortable and they're getting hostile, just be like, thank you so much. I've made my position clear, and have a good day, and just get on out of there because it's really not worth you being yelled at from a lawmaker, and that's rare. I will say that is rare, but it's not unheard of at the Texas legislature with some of these folks. So there's a question about Twitter. Is contacting representatives using Twitter and or to motivate other constituents to call their representatives?
I think the members that use Twitter use it, and it's that I know that sounds a little obvious, but you can often tell by looking at a member's Twitter feed whether it's them tweeting, whether they're really engaged on it, or whether they just have their Facebook feed feeding into their Twitter, or they have some staffer just tweeting a link to every press release they've put out, and that's it. So for those that really use it themselves, I think contacting them by Twitter works because they will look at their mentions and see it. And even if they don't respond, they'll get the message. And of course, it's also effective to spread the word about either to take an action to contact those members, or to make people let people just know, hey, this member voted this way, or this thing happened, they sold you down the river, or whatever it is. So I think Twitter can be equally effective to accomplish both of those goals, and it all depends on your specific audience and reach. But certainly, also being polite so you don't get blocked, so you can have a repeat engagement with the member is also important.
Yeah, if you get blocked, then the engagement sort of ends at that point. So we have another question about arguments or strategies that have worked with Texas or other legislators who have been opposed to reproductive rights. I can think of one example in another state. Blake, do you have any experience here in Texas?
Yeah, I found that personal stories work very well, and not everyone, of course, has a personal story that they can share, but that can be effective in these sorts of debates, especially when you're talking about some of these bills that are so beyond the pale. Those personal stories can be really helpful to say, hey, this is what this does, and this is how it would really affect real people's lives, and that matters a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard of, and I'm trying to look up quickly on my phone which state it was, but there was it was in Ohio. It was Representative Tim Ryan. He switched his position on abortion rights because of hearing stories from his constituents. So, I know it's really scary to share your story, especially if you've had an abortion or experience with abortion to talk about that, especially with a lawmaker, who opposes abortion rights. But there is at least one example of that making a difference. And I think if we continue to do it, this is really, people haven't been sharing their stories quite as long as they've been hearing from the other side. So it makes a difference. And if that's something you want to do and want some support through that process, we are here for you. And you can contact me personally, and we are happy to provide you for that support. So that's all the typed questions. I'm going to unmute everyone for a minute. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and speak up. All right. Anyone else have a question? All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Our contact information is here on this slide. I'm sorry, did we have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No problem. Okay, I'm going to mute everyone again. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And please reach out if you have any questions, problems, need some support, need anything from us. We're here for you. Contact us at any time, and we love to hear from you. So thank you so much. And we will be sending out a survey to everyone who participated, as well as a recording of this webinar. So you can give us your feedback and ideas for upcoming webinars. All right, have a good evening.